welcome to another show of Create Your Best Life with Rex. I'm very excited to have you here today and have you meet my guest today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. I'm going to bring her up, and her name is Cristina Herrera, and she's an expert in organizational change, leadership, development, and trust building. She helps organizations achieve growth and innovation through brain-based coaching and strategic advisory. She's an Australian-Latina living in New York with over 12 years in the transformational change and business strategies. She's worked workplace projects across Australia, Singapore, the UK, and now the USA. She embodies her life motto as a life lived in fear is a life half lived. And she's really tested those boundaries with skydiving, moving halfway around the world, from everyone she knows and loves to build this wonderful new career. Now, her fun fact is her career has evolved from being an artist to a high school teacher to becoming a business consultant, and she still doesn't know what she wants to be when she grows up. So I'm going to welcome to the show, Cristina. Hi, Cristina. How you doing?
Hi. It's so nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. And what the audience may or may not know is that we get to talk a little bit before the show, but now we get to talk on the show. But I'm enjoying the conversation we're having and the conversation we're about to have. So, where you are in New York right now, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm in New York. I feel like it's such a beautiful day out because the weather is just stunning. I am working from home today, so welcome to my sofa. But it's deceiving out there. It's really, really cold out there, and the wind is ridiculous.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but at least you're inside where it's warm. And I look forward to fall being over sometime soon and winter being over sometime soon and it going back to being light and warm.
That's it. That's it. I can say that I'm really, really blessed because I'm actually heading to Australia towards the end of the year. So I'm heading into summer, which is great. The, I'll miss the cold season for some of it. I'll still come back to
You're
the
going
tail
home. You're going
end.
home.
I am, yeah. I'm gonna go home, visit the family. It's long overdue.
Well, for you, it's normal to have summer in December and January. And for us, we're looking at, a quite different thing. So enjoy that time in Australia. It's nothing, we were talking about Australia on the East and West Coast, and I love Australia. It's just I think, a wonderful place. And truth be told, if it weren't so far away from everything, that I'd move there in a heartbeat. But it's a little bit far to travel. You have like a 36-hour flight ahead of you. 17-hour flight or what.
Oh yeah, it's a long flight, but I feel like Aussies typically really like travel. We're just used to it. We're far away from everything. Travel is part of our culture. Kids often take a gap year between high school and university anyway. So I've made an effort to go home at least once a year, visit family and friends, and each time, I mean, you never get sick of Australia. It's stunning, great company, great food. If anyone hasn't gone, you have to go. It's so worth the long flight.
Oh, it was around 1990, 91, 89, somewhere in there. And I was in Sydney and I was at a outdoor coffee shop with some friends, outdoor cafe, and it's coffee light, coffee dark, coffee tall, coffee short, very different. And I said, well, I'll have a coffee dark, tall, dark. And they go, okay. I said, and then she said, no worries. And I had never heard the phrase no worries before. And I was like, what? Why would I be worried? She goes, no worries. All is good. All is good. I'm like, so the way you say everything is good is to say no. And I didn't hear that phrase again for a decade or more here. I'd hear it when I was there. And then all of a sudden it started catching on here.
Yeah.
I've said it ever since I was introduced to it, but a little bit of that Australian culture, infused way back when. And
That's it. Yeah, there are so many things. It's funny because we're both, the US and Australia are both very English speaking countries, you'd think it was very easy to transition. I moved over about 10 years ago now. And culturally, it was really, really tough to, yes, of course, move away from everyone I knew, try and figure out who am I in this strange city, also independent. But culturally, it was really, really difficult to understand the nuances of culture. And then when you travel and when you're working from LA to Charlotte in North Carolina to Chicago to New York and Boston, you realize the subcultures are very different. The sayings are very different. Um, so it's all these things that I had to learn and kind of really understand the nuances across the US. That was tough.
Well, that's an interesting point because having traveled around Australia, I didn't know as much disparity between one part of the country and the other part of the country. And they're both about the same land mass. They're both pretty much founded as a prison colony, that kind of thing. And the east coast of Australia is somewhat similar to the east coast of the United States, and the west coast, like Perth, is in that LA area, of the United States. So there's a lot of similarities, and yet very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
And what you just said is a great way to open up our conversation, because in organizations and in cultures, there's lots of different disparity between not only one organization to the other organization, but within the organization itself, from one department to another department, they might have a whole different vernacular or a whole different way of understanding or approaching something. And you work in this arena. So maybe that experience that you've had, multinationally, culturally, has helped you in some way, perhaps, or?
It has, definitely. I mean, when I think about the work that I do in organizations, there is like the culture of the organization that is circulated around the mission and the values, and how they show up as an organization. But then there are all those subcultures, and some of those subcultures are within employee groups. Some of them are specifically tied to the hierarchy as well of organizations. And so when we come in and we're working with organizations to help them through transformation, whether it's digital transformation, whether it's new systems, mergers and acquisitions, whether it's the integration of AI and digitization, you start to realize, hold on a minute, this program of change and transformation is going to have to be very, very thoughtful. It's not a one size fits all. In fact, it never has been a one size fits all. But this culture piece is really the make or break, right? The last thing you want to do is be out of touch and feel like you're talking to a brick wall, or feel like the person that is communicating with you about these changes has no idea what you care about.
Well, that's an excellent point. And there's a term, boundary spanner, where you go from group to group and you actually bridge the groups or bring them together. You help unite because you're comfortable moving across those boundaries and speaking the different languages of the groups. Is that how you function? Is that what you find that you need to do?
Yeah, I find that in my role, I typically liken myself to, what's that animal that changes its colors?
Chameleon?
A chameleon. So, and I mean it in the best way, not in a distrustful way or anything like that. You almost need to be a chameleon, right? You have to start with empathy and really take the time to understand, what's important to this group of people. How do they communicate best, right? Because it's not the same way that maybe a different group of people within the same organization communicate best. And take the time to understand them so you can start to wear, their stripes and their banners or whatever it is that is important to them. When you start to really make an effort to build rapport at that level, I mean, when it comes to negotiation, when it comes to influencing change, or just getting them to see your side so they can start to understand what's in it for them, then change becomes much easier, much smoother.
So, it's an interesting thing. You said chameleon in the best possible, light, and I agree with that. A lot of people think, if you're skilled, if you're talented, if you're going to create rapport, that somehow there's something wrong with that, as opposed to, I'm going to try and build a bridge. I'm going to try and develop trust. I'm going to demonstrate that I'm a person of integrity, or I'm trustworthy, and that I'm actually trying to help and add value. there are those people who are trying to take things or deprive things, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about actually going in to help and to assist. I would liken it somehow to this, and it may be an inadequate analogy, but in our country, there are people who move from New York to, say, Texas, or from Texas to Wisconsin, or from Wisconsin to California. And oftentimes they, after living there a while, begin to sound like the people who live there. They begin to cultivate the dialect. It's a little bit different than the accents. A lot of people from England still sound like they're from England. Or if I moved to the UK, or if I moved to France, I'd probably still sound like I do. But within our culture, from moving from, say, the Midwest or the East or the West to the South, all of a sudden people are talking with a drawl and they're saying "how this" and everything. Well, if you did that and mimicked the people as if you were making fun, it would be an insult.
Oh, yes.
But if you're assimilated into the culture and you start developing the twang, or you start dropping some of the hard R's and some that the New Yorkers have, or the innie and the I get it stuff from the Midwest, and you start drawing out your words, it's actually because you're assimilated.
That's it.
Into and what the boundary spanning and rapport is about, assimilating, correct? I mean,
Absolutely. I think there's a fine line, right? We always want to build rapport with people, but there's a risk when it comes to building building rapport. So I have this incredible coach out of Australia. His name's Andrew Buto, and he taught me more about matching and mirroring, and the skill set behind matching and mirroring to really build a strong relationship with groups of people, or just one-on-one with one person. What that takes really is to observe how that person speaks, what it is they like, what's important to them, maybe also their body language. And what you do is you kind of you take on anywhere between 5 to 20% and start to mirror what they're doing, right? If they sit back in their chair, you sit back in their chair. If they're wearing glasses, find yourself some glasses. I don't know, any little thing can help to build relatability. And it's always that little thing. But the minute you go over 20%, you get to the edge of mocking. And no one likes to be mocked and mimicked to that point. And that's when rapport can go really, really wrong.
Well, I would argue that it's not rapport if it's going really, really wrong.
Yeah.
But I think you make excellent points. It's got to start with the intention. If your intention is to meet somebody where they're at, so that you can better understand them and add value to them, and have a meaningful understanding, communication, or connection, then you do what is required in whatever way you can to help that to happen, which is what you're talking about. Yeah. I think a lot of people think, well, if I'm doing something like matching or mirroring, then I'm somehow being manipulated. Well, only if that's what you intend to be doing.
Yeah.
I think your purpose has everything to do with the outcome. And there are those people who will use it to try and gain advantage or taking from another person. And then those people, because it's naturally what happens between people.
That's it. Yeah. It's almost like learning through osmosis. Like naturally, you're going to become a little bit like, or you're going to find the similarities between you and other people, right? Instinctually, all we want to do is belong. So we are naturally going to start to match and mirror here and there unintentionally. It's when you become intentional about it that you can actually think, hold on a minute, yes, we have more in common than I thought. And then, it helps when you're trying to build relationships as well in large organizations, because ultimately you have to influence and you have to negotiate, and change. Change isn't a choice right now, right? With the democratization of technology, change is a necessity. And it's a skill set. And it's like going to the gym and building a muscle. It just gets stronger and stronger and stronger.
Great point. What's interesting, and by the way, I want to say to the people who are watching live or even in replay, you can comment, you can like, you can share, and you can ask questions, especially while Christina's here with us live. So if you're wherever you're watching from, I always have to say this. I don't always see all the comments because sometimes technology interrupts things, and where most people are commenting, it doesn't show up where I'm at. But when I see them, or if I see them, I will absolutely, ask that they be put up.
Nice.
You make really excellent points. I think another thing that's really, you've traveled a lot, and you worked across different cultures, different countries, different states, that kind of thing. Um, so much of what communication is about, if you think about it, is people like people who are like themselves. They assimilate, they gather. The Irish moved into a community, the Spanish moved into a community, the Germans moved into, they find people who are like themselves so that they can get along. And then we tend to think somehow that not everybody's like us, but the Germans and the Spanish and the Irish and the French have more in common than the differences. They speak a different language, they have some different ceremonies and everything, but as people, we're all pretty much the same. I mean, there are going to be some, obviously counterexamples in extremely different cultures, but I think it's important for people to understand that if people like people who are like themselves and they tend to gravitate toward people who are like them, it's also true that people tend to say yes to people they like. If they're not saying yes, it may mean that they don't at that moment like you. It doesn't mean that they hate you, but it may mean in that moment they don't feel. So what you're talking about is developing a connection to people to make it easier to get along, easier to communicate, easier to exchange ideas, and to move the needle forward, whatever that means.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to our motivation and our nature. When we think about the science of motivation or the neuroscience of motivation, one of the models that I tend to continually go back to is David Rock's SCARF model. And he talks about these core areas of human motivation. And when these core areas of human motivation are rewarded, you get a reward response. It's like, oh, let me learn more. Let me share more information with you. Let me open up a little bit more. But the minute that those key elements are threatened, you're going to get the threat response. And what that looks like is I might just shut down. I might not trust you. I might not share information for whatever reason. And so those key elements are status, right? If my status is really important to me as an individual based on my life experience, I'm going to want to make sure that who I'm dealing with doesn't threaten my status or, in some respects, rewards that status. The next one is certainty. So if I find certainty to be something that really grounds me and it's important to me, the minute that my certainty is at threat, right? And this is what I'm seeing a lot in organizations. If you've been working at an organization for 15, 20 years, you've been doing this job, it's the way you've always done it. And here I come in and I say, hey, everyone, let's talk because, I don't know, the systems are going to change and you used to do this and now you're going to do something different. That's automatically going to receive a threat response, right? I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I can do the job as well as I used to. I don't know what my future holds. So that certainty is something that I would probably say there are certain people that are really, really good because of their life experience dealing with ambiguity and dealing with uncertainty. But then there are those who really struggle with it. And often that's noticed or classified as resistance. And what I guess maybe this is a great opportunity to call out is, even resistant behaviors, it's just feedback. It's just a data point. Often it is we haven't communicated enough. We haven't provided enough certainty around all of the changes that are happening in an organization.
I love that. I love that. I'm so glad you said that because so many people in sales, in marketing, in trying to get people to do other things in their job, even in their own family, they go, well, they're resisting me, and they're blocking me, they're challenging me, they've got objections to what I'm doing, as opposed to saying, maybe I haven't addressed their concerns enough. Maybe I haven't, helped them understand, the benefits and the ups and downs to this thing in a way that they can move forward with the decision. So it's really up to me. And if you take it as feedback as opposed to a blame or an accusation to the other person, now you've got something you can do because you can adjust.
Yes.
But if you just blame them, then it's their fault, and everything I'm doing is they're not working, and So I love that because what you're doing is taking resistance and showing that you can turn it into assistance.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think one of the superpowers of consultants and organizations that are going to continue to stay at the top is going to be the ability to pivot, right? I think there was this old idea that if there was a change coming or an improvement to an organization, we would document how it happens now, unfreeze it, change it, and then set it in place. Like the strategy is locked in place. But that's not the case anymore because the world is changing, because there are internal and external triggers to organizations that they must respond to, right? Or they must react to. Hopefully not react. Hopefully they're thinking ahead and responding. But the organizations and the consultants that are going to remain ahead of the game are going to be the ones that recognize this, that understand that even a strategy might require pivoting, updating along the way. And maybe those success measures change very slightly. But I do think that this is going to make it really hard for traditional contracts and procurement teams to operate within that new arena.
So when you go in, I mean, what do you, as a consultant, somebody who's going into a company for the first time or trying to assist them in making whatever changes or transitions or remedial repairs or whatever it might be, what do you consider your first prime directive, and then the couple steps after that, as a consultant, as a coach, as a facilitator for change?
I mean, building rapport and understanding my network is probably the first thing that I do. I am a huge advocate for not only inclusion but diversity of thought, and it's hard to develop any type of strategy or any type of measure of success if we don't have the people at the table to begin with. So it's always really thinking about, do we have everyone that we need? Do we have the diversity? Do we have everyone who can influence or can make or break whatever success or improvement we're trying to achieve? The next step would be really measuring success. And measuring success starts with defining what success might look like. Many organizations are not actually used to measuring what productivity looks like, feels like, sounds like, right? Unless they are tracking the amount of patterns, for example. Many organizations don't actually have a specific measure. And what COVID has taught us, and many organizations that were ahead of the curve prior to COVID, is that measuring badge attendance to an office is not a measure of productivity whatsoever. And so I usually start at those two areas: is building rapport, understanding who I'm speaking with, that empathy piece, the networking piece. And then really it is, what might success look like? And not just verbally, but really thinking about it, like, paint a picture for me. What is it going to look like when we're successful? And I think understanding kind of what they're thinking, that's always magic for me, because magic doesn't happen. It's like when they say in Disneyland, it's magical. Magic just doesn't happen. There's strategy, there's operations, there's planning, there's a whole cast behind the scenes that make the magic happen. And so that's how I like to think about it.
No, that's awesome. I do agree with you. I think a lot of people don't measure what they should be measuring, and they don't chart it. They don't know where they're at in the process, and that's a huge difficulty to overcome if you're not doing it. Because if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going, and you don't know where you've been, and you can't get to where you're going if you can. So I mean, on the other hand, measuring is you got to be sure. You said you got to be sure you're measuring what you're intending to measure. One of the things with, for example, the scientific method and constructing studies to test whatever it is, whether studying gravity or studying a medicine or studying this, is, are you actually studying what you're proposing to study? And have you made the study, is it, if you're, for example, rapport studies sometimes are notoriously awful because they'll say, we're looking at matching the verbal language that another person used. Does that create rapport or not? And I go, yes, in some cases, and no in others. And the question is, and they say, but we're operationalizing rapport in this fashion, or we're operationalizing. Well, if you've operationalized it, and you're not studying what you're going to study, the results that you get aren't significant. I mean, they won't matter. And that so often happens in psychological studies, in studies of human interaction, and it so often happens in office places, workplaces, where they think they're doing something according to a particular process or rule or procedure, and they aren't.
Yeah.
They're doing something completely different. And so when they don't get the results that they want or think they're supposed to get, then they don't know what they do. So someone like yourself comes in and says, it creates rapport and demonstrates, hey, you need, and gives them some feedback so that they can begin to see how they might make those adjustments and move forward in a more productive fashion.
Yeah.
Without the feedback, they're clueless, right?
Absolutely. It's hard to be self-critical. So self-talk happens all the time. We are the most biggest critics of ourselves, right? And I know this because I'm also a coach, and I have incredible coachees who are working through their self-talk. But what is difficult to see and observe is the things that you have on autopilot. And it's those things on autopilot where we think we're kind of chipping away at something. We're not really thinking about it very much, or not too deeply. And so we lose sight of what the original outcome was, what we were actually trying to achieve. And it's those things where, through coaching or through organizational transformation or change, or having a consultant, a third party, someone else who can ask some probing questions and really get you to think about those things that you're so used to keeping on autopilot. Is there a better way of doing this? Did it achieve what you were looking to achieve? And I am super thankful for the coaches that I have. I recommend everyone has a coach. Rex, I know you are an incredible coach as well. And I think all coaches should have coaches. What do you reckon, Rex?
Well, I agree. I do think that is absolutely crucial. That if you're somebody who wants to move ahead, that you move ahead because somebody's helping you move ahead, and you're willing to be changeable, you're willing to be teachable, or you're willing to learn, you're willing to transform. Which two of the things that I think are really difficult for organizations of any size, of any merit, of any construction deal with, that are problematic. One is, we've always done it this way, and they defend what they've done instead of saying, well, maybe we need to look at what we've done. And the other one is when you run to somebody and you go, can you do this? And they go, no. And you go, you're not able to go outside of protocol in order to make an intelligent decision about something. In other words, you can't could you find somebody you could ask if you could do this? I mean, in other words, they just stop, it's like they're thinking, and that becomes very stodgy, I think, in business. What say you?
Yeah, I do think the best thing that I've seen in business is the ability to standardize, the ability to scale. And for that, we need to have a best practice, and we need to have a way that we do things. So I'm definitely not discrediting the need for that. I think, though, a periodic or a predictable cadence for how can we improve is something that is required. And I think if we expect continuous improvement, or have a culture of continuous improvement, then it's not going to be as hard every time. Or you're going to look for opportunities for efficiencies that you can bring to that, whatever improvement milestone or meeting that's coming up.
Well, that's great. So I want to keep going, but I also want to talk about, you are a co-founder, and it says there right under your name, of Trustworthy, with Susan Spears, who was on the show recently. I've known Susan since the time before the world was round, kind of thing. And we've known each other a long time. I shouldn't say that. She's young. We're both young at heart, but we've known each other a couple of decades, 3 decades or more. And somehow you and Susan met, and you've created this foundation company that you work together on. Tell us about that. And
Yeah, goodness. So maybe I'll start with Susan. If anyone doesn't know Susan, you have to know Susan. I absolutely adore her. Susan and I met volunteering for a community called the Workplace Evolutionaries. That is really a community about um, um, creating community within workplaces and organizations around the world. It's about bringing research and bringing data and sharing that about what is coming up with workplace trends, whether it's ways of working, real estate, technology, experience as well. And what's interesting is that we didn't know each other when we were both volunteering. No idea about each other. And only when we took a pause on that volunteering journey, just because life got in the way, we got really, really busy, we connected on a call about membership. And that's when I feel like it was almost like a love at first sight. Susan and I really bonded over our shared experience and our history. Both of us have psychology degrees, both of us have a background in education. And we were talking about what is that missing element in the workplace, or what is it the thing that children or high school children are not taught that carries into the workplace. And what we thought that was building trust, right? I was a high school teacher at one point. Never did I ever focus on how to build trust. I teach and I lecture every now and then at Pratt Institute here in Brooklyn. Never have I been asked to speak about trust. It's always about specific capabilities or deliverables or workplace strategy, change management, for example. Um, so it was something that kept coming up for us. And as we started to do research, we realized that trust in the world statistically has continued to deteriorate over time. And we didn't see many people focusing on trust. So we thought, you know what? Why not us? Like, why do we have to wait for someone else? So we started to have conversations with leaders across different industries, different platforms around the world, including yourself, Rex, and talking about what is the value of trust? How do you build trust? We hold and we still host monthly trustworthy labs where people come together and they talk about trust in their careers, in their professional lives. And I do think that we have made such an impact already, and we have planted a lot of seeds for people. They've taken their conversation in their organizations as well to further build trust with their teams. So that's sort of how it came together. But a funny thing is, Susan and I had been working on this project for about 2 years before she was visiting um, New York. I think she had another meeting in New York somewhere at an embassy because she volunteers on different boards. And I said to her, "Oh, come stay with me." And that's when it clicked. We'd actually never met in person before. Yeah, and I thought, what a great example of the fact that we could build we could build trust, we could build a business having never met. And then the first time we meet in person, you're actually staying in my apartment. So that was the birth of really of trustworthy. And we're working with so many different organizations now and doing coaching as well, helping people build trust, starting with self trust, helping people understand the agreements in how to build trust with one other person, how to build trust in teams and incorporating team dynamics, but then the organizational level as well.
wow. Well, the world certainly needs it. I think the assessment that fewer people trust today than they did yesterday, the day before, however long you want to go back, is that there's been this erosion, and that's due to many different things. I mean, we could spend days and months, long winters talking about why we have the problem. But
Yeah.
what you've done is addressed the problem and gone, okay, so what about self-trust? What about trust between people? What about trust in groups or organizations? How do you do it? What do you do? And I just, that's really, really wonderful because it's so needed today. And there are groups out there that I think, kind of do some of that, like AA and different things, who say, look, what stays in the room, what we say in the room stays in the room, that kind of thing. And we're here, and they support each other, and they develop a rapport, they develop a trust, and they are there to support each other. I mean, obviously, somebody will say, well, that wasn't my experience, and there's always a counter example, or where trust is broken or rapport is. But in general, what you're doing is I think, a very worthy mission.
Thank
So
you.
how can people support you in that? I think that's really something that's important to get to know, is what can people do, or where can they go to learn more about Trustworthy? If they have issues and they want to join one of your labs, what do they do?
Absolutely. So we invite everyone to join our movement, and to make an intentional step to further build trust in their personal lives and professional lives. Um, you could always reach out to me on LinkedIn under Cristina Herrera. Susan and I also have a trustworthy page, spelled with a capital T and a capital W, the way it's spelled just there under my name. Um, and sign up to one of our free labs. It's completely complimentary. We do it every single month. And it's an opportunity for you to get to know us, build trust with us. We'll get to know you a little bit more. And that is probably the first conversation where we start to unpack trust a little bit more, equip you with some information so you can talk about it at home, with your teams at work. And then if you decide you want to jump into some coaching, we can do that as well. If you'd like us to come and speak to your team, we can do that as well. So there's endless opportunities, but I think, I hate to make it about the bottom line, but I know that it is a conversation that if you are thinking of bringing it into your organization, that has to the conversation has to be had. And so if that is something that you are looking for, Susan and I have a lot of testimonials as well as data about the return on trust. And it's absolutely something that cannot be ignored. It leads to more productive teams, more engaged employees. And I think it's something that, these days, engagement is hard to come by in an attention culture. So, yeah. Find us on any platform, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. And yeah, would love to have a conversation with you.
So can they, is this correct? I just said search Trustworthy because I don't have the link to it, but if they look at Trustworthy like that, they would be able to get to you. And I've had your LinkedIn, and Susan's been on the show, and people should go back and look at Susan's show. I don't remember the title of it, but her name is Susan Spears. It was a few weeks back.
Absolutely.
And, if they go to Create Your Best Life with Rex, the YouTube channel, they'll find it. Or if they go to rextv.com, they can find it. And there's a discussion that Susan and I had. Now there's the discussion that you and I've had. So, Christine, Susan and I've known each other a long time. I actually certified her as a practitioner in neurolinguistic programming back when that's how we met. But and I don't know if she likes me telling this story or not. I think I've told it on the air before, but maybe not. But I'd gone to at the time, the mega mall of in Minneapolis, the biggest mall, at the time in the world, and visited a magic shop and came home with a couple of magic tricks. Well, went to her house with a couple of magic tricks. And so I prepared this thing. I said, watch this, this is going to amaze you. And she was sitting on the couch, and I proceeded to throw a glass of water on her. That wasn't the trick that was supposed to happen. It was supposed to have disappeared, but it didn't disappear. It just covered her with water. And I felt so stupid and silly and everything else. And she still trusted me all these years later.
That's some real trust right there.
Yeah, the fact that she trusted me enough to go, I'm going to do this. And I didn't tell her I was going to throw water on. I just did it. But that's not what I intended to do. I intended to have it vanish. At any rate, she's a good sport, and she's gone through a lot, and you are a good sport, and you've gone through a lot, and you both together, offer incredible value for people. And as you said, I was in a trustworthy lab with you, and I just found that what you both are doing, is, as I said just moments ago, very much needed. And as with anything, if some people would get involved and then help spread it and help share it, you can light a million candles off of one candle, but that candle has to be lit. You have a lit candle called Trustworthy that's helping people get in touch with their own awareness about their own self-trust or trusting other people, and that can spread like wildfire, around the world. And so I applaud you and support you in whatever way I can.
Thank you.
Oh, of course, no, of course. So, what else? I mean, what else is important? We've got about 15 minutes, or something like that left, maybe a little longer. But in terms of corporate change and what's important in corporations today, I think things have changed. I mean, in the industrial age, there were, from where we were, 40 or 50, 60, 80 years ago when things are coming to where we are today, that one of the things that I see a lot, is still, crush your competition kind of stuff versus collaboration and cooperation and working together and building harmony and bridges and being able to carry a message, like multiple businesses working together to carry the torch of a message to the people, as opposed to, Nike doing it or Adidas doing it, or, I mean, do you see the world, we're coming together, we're splitting apart, a little bit of both? I mean, what
I do see a little bit of both, if I'm honest. But what I am seeing a big shift in, which is, I think, a positive thing, is, you're right, there was the industrial age and proliferation, democratization of technology. And then we have this like huge, I don't know, age of creativity right now, where people are come together, they're sharing more information publicly online, whether it's brainstorming sessions or even some of the conversations are much more open. And so what I'm really excited about is the ability to really organizations to better unlock people's potential. So when I think about different organizations, there is a mentality in some organizations that it was tough for me to progress. You have to pay your dues. What I'm finding now is that culture is starting to, thankfully, be let go of, right? It's that legacy thinking that is actually stopping organizations from progressing. There are a lot of young people these days who have skills that you would never know because you've hired them to do this one job within these parameters. And there's this belief that, your career started when you started working for this company. And so the shift that I'm seeing is both in the diversity of skill sets that young people have, Gen Z and soon to be, what is it, Gen Alpha, much more diverse skill sets coming into the workplace, which is going to be really interesting to see how organizations deal with the diversity of skill sets and deal with maybe the need of a bit of play at work. I do think that play at work is so often overlooked. And so I'm really excited to see how that continues to grow. But the part that I was a little bit concerned about is that old school thinking of you have to pay your dues, or you've only been at the company for this long. No, you can't play in this other area. You have to stay in your lane. And I know that very clearly because when I first wanted to become a consultant, I started as a learning and development consultant. I was very interested in change. And I was told at the time, no, Chris, you're in learning and development. Like, you should just stay there. And so I was pigeonholed myself. And it was thankfully to my mentor who was like, heck no. Like, if you have an interest in this, why not? You know what I mean? So he shadowed me. He mentored, like, He allowed me to shadow him. He mentored me. He enabled me really and empowered me. And my life would have been so different if I was pigeonholed. And I probably would have felt so unsatisfied at that organization that ultimately helped my career, um, because of the community and because of this one person who didn't believe in the pay your dues. I had it tough, so you should have it tough.
Wow. Let me ask you this, and I agree with you. I mean, if you think something's going to be tough, it's going to be tougher than it might have been otherwise. Not that you won't be surprised sometimes. If you think it's going to be easy, it's going to be easier than it might be. Not that you won't be surprised at how difficult it could be. But attitude really matters, and how you go into anything. It kind of sets the frame and the tone and the pace at which people do things. And some people think they got to struggle and they got to you know risk and they got to do all these things that they really don't. I mean, in many ways. Um, but I want to ask you this because a lot of us, we become coaches, we become consultants, we become trainers, we get corporate gigs, we go in and we're ready to help them change, and they go, don't do anything. Be here but don't do anything. You let them think you're changing stuff, but we really don't want any. We don't want to upset the apple cart. Do you encounter some of that, and when you do, as a consultant, what do you do?
Yeah, I have experienced that where I was hired for a particular role that I thought I was going to be supporting something. And they said, no, 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 we just have to make it appear like make them think that they have a say, but don't actually ask them.
Right.
Or, just ask them questions, but we're not actually going to do anything with that. Which is terribly sad and also a terrible waste of time, right? If we think about productivity again, like that just doesn't make sense. In what world does that make sense? In what world does that lead to a return on investment? So this faking of engagement I have experienced before. um, but it's been, I want to say, about 7 years since I've experienced that.
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen that recently. Have you?
Not recently, but it has been something that at one time was pretty pervasive. I think now, I mean, you could say, well, if you want me to do that, then uh, give me 100 times what I charging you. I mean, if you want me to do nothing, I charge more. Um, why am I here?
Why am I here? Exactly.
But I mean, some of that's based on studies. For example, they did those studies back in the industrial age where they factory workers doing something, they turned the heat up, and the factory got more productive. They turned the heat down, it got more productive. They turned the lights on, and it got more productive. They turned the lights down, and it got more productive. And everybody keeps thinking, well, if you turn the heat up, that works. And then it was, oh no, if you turn the heat down, it works. I mean, they didn't know what it was. And then the overall conclusion was it didn't matter what you changed, as long as you changed something, the employees thought that they were being attended to and that you were meeting their needs in some fashion. So it was the perception of being taken care of that helped them be productive or be more productive. And that's all fine and well, but I mean, it's a whole lot nicer if you're actually caring for people and actually demonstrating that you care. So in the remaining time, we've got, say 5 minutes. And unless you have something else you want to talk about, and I do want you to do that, is we're talking about trust, and we're talking about people being trust, but people give their trust away sometimes. They're gullible. they're, you know. So, what are the characteristics or traits of a trustworthy person, or someone that you could more reasonably feel good about paying attention to or listening, as opposed to investing your time, energy, and money in somebody who turns out to be a bad apple?
Someone who's trustworthy is not going to try to convince you. They're going to speak to you with conviction. And they're going to give the option to walk away if you're not a good fit. And that's definitely something I would love to have 50 coaching clients, but we're not always a good fit, and that's okay. Right? Maybe it's life experience. Maybe it's something that you want to dig into that I think actually maybe this other coach might be a better fit for you. Um, and so, what really, in my eyes, that makes someone trustworthy is the ability to lead from a place of abundance. If you're not leading from a place of abundance, you're going to be taking on too much, overselling your credibility, um, trying to convince too much, and really not being able to be genuine. And so I always encourage, whether it's a client or a coachee, to give them time to think and say, am I a good fit for you as a consultant, as a coach, as a friend, as well? Because it's okay. Like, you can be a trustworthy person without having to be friends with absolutely everyone or having to take on absolutely everyone. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. Absolutely. I mean, I think that if I'm coaching somebody and we're not a fit, I have to work harder, and I don't really want to work any harder. I'd rather have them get with the right person that can help them and assist them with the
Yeah.
greatest ease and efficiency as possible than me having to work harder because I desperately needed to get them as a client, and so I don't. So to be able to refer out, to not be desperate, to not need the attention or the love or the job so much that you're willing to sacrifice your own integrity and say anything to anybody in order to get them into your corner.
Yeah.
It really just means more work for you in the long run, because if you don't then meet their needs, then they're disappointed and they're going to go out and say, well, that person didn't meet my needs, and so you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So to be trustworthy, to have integrity, to walk your talk and demonstrate it seems to be the best course of action, and yet very few people seem, I shouldn't say very few, but it seems like there are far more people willing to stretch the truth and lie and persuade and to cajole and to do all these things, and there are people who go, you know what, let's find the right thing for you.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. I think that's one thing that I know I am absolutely proud of myself and my ability to help other people. I make an effort to be able to connect people. Sometimes I don't need to be the one doing the helping, but one of my superpowers is the networking and the building of connections. And so, as much as I possibly can, if I know someone has this need and someone over here wants to share a little bit of what they've got, and there's a potential match, I'm like, okay, let me be that connection between them. And I don't even need to continue and stay in the middle of that. I mean, I think, again, leading from a place of abundance can do wonders, not only for those people you're trying to help, but for your own self-confidence as well.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So we're going to have to wrap up. So I want to give you the opportunity to close out your segment with us today by talking about anything that's near and dear to your heart, or anything we haven't covered that you would like to cover that that may have been unaddressed by us.
Sure. I mean, look, I have been absolutely blessed by people and organizations taking a chance on me. Really not knowing who is this strange Australian in this country. She's never worked in America before. She might sound funny, um, and people have taken a chance on me. And so, if I could share anything, is try your best to show up genuinely yourself. Know yourself enough so that you can show up in credibility as well. Um, but I can't stress enough the opportunity for you to take a chance on someone else. I know the value of someone taking a chance on me and how it has supported and helped me to grow my career. I really just encourage everyone to take a chance on someone. Um, Go out there and try to lead from a place of abundance and build more trust in the world, because we desperately need it. And I genuinely think I lead a better um, life and quality of life because I'm un, I understand and I'm able to harness trust in my relationships, in my day to day life. So that's why I live by my motto: a life lived in fear is a life half lived. It's hard to live in fear when you're walking in trust.
Oh, that is beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I think also, the ability to go to sleep at night and feel good about yourself and wake up in the morning and still feel good about yourself and the people that you help serve and benefit and work with. There's nothing, I don't think anything better in a career or a job or as a parent or in a relational partner than being able to add value to somebody else and then see how they flourish as a result of that. And you don't have to take the credit. Whether you get the credit or not, it's not so important. It's the fact that, like, you get to see them grow. It's like going out and planting tomatoes in the backyard or something. Go, look what, that's so cool. It's kind of like nature took over. I didn't make the tomatoes grow, but I planted the seeds. And I think so. I think that's really, really beautiful. And you've been really beautiful. Everything you've said and share, and your work together independently and your work together with Susan and Trustworthy has just been absolutely amazing and phenomenal. And this won't be the last time that either of you are on the show. Will be more times, but I really thank you for your time today and for your insights and the work that you're doing in the world and helping people connect up with resources and possibilities and opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't. And so thank you and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, and to everyone who follows Rex and whoever that follows me. It's been such a pleasure, and I can't wait to speak to you some more.
We'll be talking again soon. So with that, I'll say so long, and then again, we'll do this again. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for watching the show today. It's been an amazing day. I love what Cristina has presented for us. I think it's very, very important. And I do encourage you to go back and watch Susan's show, Susan Spears. And in that show, we talked a lot about an illness that she overcame, where she was paralyzed and unable to walk and move. And the importance of both these shows together was mindset, heart set, and the ability to generate and create trust and promote that in the world, as Cristina and Susan are doing. So check out Trustworthy, check out Cristina, both at LinkedIn and on her website. If you've missed anything, go back and watch the show again, and please do share it out and make it available to other people, because if you've been touched, and even if you haven't, somebody else might be touched. So go ahead, leave comments and share. And it's kind of like dropping a rock in a pond. That ripple goes out and spreads in great and positive ways. Now, before we go, I want to tell you about something that's really important, something that I'm doing, something I'm very, very proud of, and I know you will be too. And it's something that you absolutely need, but I'm not going to say too much more than that. And that is, I have put together a program called Create Your Best Life using Einstein and Tesla's Genius. And here's the website. And what that program is about is how to overcome your problems and the troubles that you face by becoming a better problem solver, by becoming more creative, more flexible, more resilient in your thinking, and tapping into your own intuition so that you get out of your own way. So many of us are trying to manifest things, whether it's money, health, relationships, or a better leisure time. We're trying to overcome difficulties and limitations. People are around going, I suck. I don't know what I'm doing. I have these blocks. I have these obstacles. I have these hardships. And they self-criticize and they berate themselves. And, this thing, if you think 60,000 thoughts a day, that you've heard that before. And most of them are like the ones we thought yesterday. They're negative tape loops that are playing independent of you. I mean, most people aren't sitting around going, how can I criticize myself? But they do. Well, the Create Your Best Life using Einstein and Tesla's Genius is a program. It's an online video program. Go at your own pace. It's got videos and manuals and articles and all sorts of bonuses in the community. I am, training and teaching and sharing it. I'm continuing to build out modules for that. And I love this program, and I love the people in the program. And I know you'll love being in the program. And I invite you to check it out at rexsikes.com/Einstein and see if that isn't for you. Because if you have any problems and you want to be able to solve them, this is the way that you're going to start. And if I don't want to say any more. I want you to go and check it out. So go and check it out. It's an incredible program. I'm very thrilled. I'm very proud. I'm very happy. And go there now and enroll if that's for you. And then I'll see you in the program. Meanwhile, all the very best. As I always say, if you have something that you consider a problem, it's a problem. That's the mindset thing. If you consider something a blessing, it's a blessing. So celebrate everything. And with that, I'm very pleased to have been here. Thanks, my guest, Cristina Herrera. And I'll see you the next time. With that, I say namaste And you have a beautiful day. And in the meantime, celebrate fall or the impending summer as it approaches, wherever you're at. Bye bye.